Shush.
That's a good start to the meeting. Welcome to INRIPAL's first international online networking event, to this very last day of the event and the very last session. Before we start, I just have, as usual, a few practical bits of information. So this session is recorded until we get to the end of the talk, and then we stop the recording so that if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask those, and they will not be on the recording. We'll just run a quick poll on sort of generally who you are listening in, and I'll talk to you about the event, Padlet, and ways of being involved, and then we'll have the talk. So this week we're hoping to get some contributions from our membership about what is psychosocial adjustment and rehabilitation, and obviously many people are not sure what it is, but this is why we need to define it better. But sort of very roughly, it's this thing: how do people learn to live with a long-term condition, and what can we do to help them? This whole week, we've had a Padlet tool online, accessible for everyone. If you look at page 8 in your delegate pack, there's a link to the tool where there are 6 questions, and you can put in your answers. We already have some replies on it. Just remember, if you put in a comment, make sure you press the little arrow next to your comment in order to submit the response. We had a facilitated session yesterday where we had some discussions about these questions, and later on we will be sending out the results of these of this exercise of getting people's replies. Finally, ways of being involved. If you're not already a member of our LinkedIn group, which is where the main membership for the moment is connected with us, please go to the INRIPAL LinkedIn group and request membership. If you want to be more actively involved, you can either become a member of the Lived Experience group. If you are interested in that, please contact Stephanie Kılınç. Her email address is below on the slide, or you can contact her through the LinkedIn group. You might also be, or you might be interested in being a member of the leadership board, or maybe interested in research collaborations, or anything else to do with the INRIPAL group. Please contact myself, and my email address is also below on the screen, or you can contact me through the LinkedIn group. So without further delay, I would like to, actually a little bit further delay, sorry. I would like to just quickly do a little poll before we start the talk. So basically, sort of in general, who you are. They are anonymous replies, and it's just a single choice. If several choices apply to you, just take the one that applies most in this context. I would very much appreciate if you could please answer these questions. That would be great. Thank you. So just keep it open a few seconds more if anybody else wants to reply. That's great, thank you. Right. Oh, we have one outside Europe. That's fantastic. That's really great. That's great. So if you want to see, so we have researchers and other, and we have one person from the Asian continent and the rest from Europe. So that's great. Welcome to everybody. And now we proceed to the talk. I just want to stop sharing my screen so that right, so welcome to Steph Kılınç and Joe Cole, who will talk about the power of lived experience. And I will turn off my video and microphone and see you later.
Thank you, Liz. Hello, so welcome to the talk today. I'm Stephanie Kılınç, I'm a health psychologist at Teesside University, and I'm joined today by Joe Cole from NeuroKey, which is a charity based in our region, working with people with neurological conditions. I don't know if you want to say anything, Joe.
No, just welcome. Hello, everybody.
And we've worked together 15 years now.
Longer than that.
In NeuroKey, around 15 years. And the last few years, it's the work that we've been doing has really started to pick up pace and starting to show some real impact for people with long-term conditions and neurological conditions. So that's what we'd like to talk to you about today, about a self-management package that we've developed over the last 3-4 years, which is firmly grounded in the lived experience of people with long-term conditions, which is a key element of the work that both Joe and I do, and the work of NeuroKey. So just a little bit of background to begin with. Looking at self-management of long-term conditions, what you see in the literature is that they're often based on medical rehab-based definitions and evaluated with medical outcomes. So things like, are people adhering to their treatment and those sorts of things, which is part of the story, but it's certainly not the whole. And we believe that, and we have evidence to support that self-management, it's much broader than that. That living with a long-term condition can have an impact across all spheres of a person's life in a form of like a ripple effect, really, from diagnosis and even pre-diagnosis, because diagnosis can take some time, and onwards. So with that approach in mind, we wanted to develop a new way of looking at self-management for people with long-term conditions that was less instructional, less practitioner-led, and more about the person themselves understanding their condition within the context of their life, so that they can develop their own strategies and self-management resources for themselves. And we also see self-management as a fluid, ongoing process. It's not a one-off event. Life changes, circumstances change, conditions change and fluctuate as well. And so self-management strategies may need to be adapted and change alongside that. So they're the principles underpinning the work that we've been doing. And I'll just pass to Joe just to talk a bit more about the partnership with NeuroKey.
Yeah, we established a working relationship a number of years ago when Steph was doing her epilepsy research, and we have continued. Now we are lived experience ambassadors for the doctorate in counselling psychology at Teesside University, and we take part in a range of seminars and sessions for the occupational health, occupational voice sessions, where we recruit essentially people with lived experience of a range of neuro conditions, and they take part in talking to students, they take part in giving briefs and talks on life with their condition. One of the pivotal reasons for this is the dearth of evidence in terms of neurological conditions, life, the needs of the client group. And we did feel very strongly that the access to psychological support really needed to be on a care pathway. So we've set about a collaborative working relationship on a number of issues. And the part one to sort of improving some of the impacts and some of the ways people live with their condition was to recruit from our peer group a range of people with lived experience of neurological and long-term conditions. We had a broad range, and basically we had discussions, didn't we, Steph? We nurtured them in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Nothing was off the table kind of thing, and we had some very open discussions which explored some of their lived experience and what they could bring to the table. And I do know from feedback they found this very empowering. It gave them a sense that they actually did exist outside just their diagnosis, and that they could bring some skill and interest to the table. And when we were developing the self-management tool, it was kind of, they took charge. We very much made it that they had the power of the yes or no. And again, they found that very empowering. You could tell along the sessions that we had that they built their confidence up much more, that they, and some of the confidence was the relationships between the participants, which became very, very strong. And there was a lot of camaraderie to it, that there was that sense of that they really did belong, that they weren't being isolated, they weren't being marginalized, that they really were included. And yes, from that perspective, we were thrilled with some of that, because it really meant that we believed what we were doing was right, basically. We've stuck to this principle for a lot of years, and it was really proof that it was actually working. So very much so, in terms of, we put in some training, and some of the recruitment processes, we very much based on the principles of counselling, as well as dealing with confidential information and that kind of thing. And it was readily accepted. There was no sort of anybody turned away, there was nothing. So in terms of the training, it was very much about the decision making and how we would arrive at the decisions. They held the power of those decisions. So in the development of the self-management tool in particular, it was very much down to what was included, their perspectives on some of the potential pages that Steph offered them. We felt it was a lot better to give them things to take a look at than just start completely with a blank page. And they readily just absorbed that process, and pretty much they designed the management tool. In terms of the participatory approach, and it's very much about how you nurture the group, peer group, researchers, however you would like to call it. It's very much a nurturing process. And it's obviously, you have to get to know the people involved and how to work with them. And your own kind of circumstances really have to be set aside. You can't come over as saying, well, I'm the lead and I'm telling you what to do. It was the very opposite of that. In effect, Steph and I just sat there and listened, made notes. Yes, we went away and had chats, brought back to the next meeting, and made sure we continued with this 360-degree cycle of communication all the time, that nobody was left out, nobody felt they didn't have a voice and that kind of thing. So in terms of the outputs, it was about the decision making, the design. They even chose the name of the tool. And even on one of the sessions, we actually sought out and booked the website domain name. And it, as I said, I can't highly rate it enough, because it was everything we'd hoped for, and it really spelt out how people, when they are nurtured with a little bit of training, how they can really develop the value of a project. And your development and your delivery is so much more valuable because of it. The evaluation, we've had a range of feedback, haven't we, Steph? And it's been used in a range of areas, notably at the hospital and Mind. Am I right in saying being used at Mind? And we're really keen to push this forward. We do feel really strongly that the kind of, as Steph has alluded to, the length of time it takes for diagnosis, people lose themselves in the clinical routines and the appointments, and it becomes a way of life is totally around their neurological condition. Whereas before it was diagnosed, they had a range of skills, they had employment, they had other things, hobbies and interests. And what we try and do is bring all those forwards and say, you know, that's part and parcel of who you are, and how would you like it represented? I am thrilled to be involved with this program, because it's everything I believe that the way we need to be moving in the future.
Thanks, Jo. So I'm going to quickly take you through the 3 different parts of the project, beginning with the research, the lived experience research that underpinned the tool. Then part 2 is the tool itself and how we developed it, which Jo's talked quite a bit about, how the people with long-term conditions were involved, and I'll explain a little bit more about the tool itself and the evaluation. And then the third part, which was more of a face-to-face programme to accompany the tool. So back in about 2017, we started the project with some research looking at the lived experience of self-managing a neurological condition. And we started in neuro specifically because this was a joint project with NeuroKey. But as the project evolved, we were even asked the question, why don't we use this with people with any long-term condition? And to be perfectly frank, we didn't know why we couldn't. So we decided to give it a try. And you know, as we've gone on and more people have used it with a range of long-term conditions, we've found that yes, it does work for them as well. So it starts as neuro and then it broadens out. But what we did was we asked people to reflect on their self-management experience, and we developed this framework, which I'm not going to go into too much detail at the moment, because I will in the next slide when I talk about it in relation to the tool. But ultimately, we found that meaning and purpose was central to self-management, having and maintaining meaning and purpose in life. And that was influenced by the 5 different elements that are in the centre of the diagram there. And we also found that reflection is key, an ongoing reflective process on what self-management strategies work, what don't work, what does give someone meaning and purpose in life and what doesn't. And with it, as part of that reflective strategy was around finding the new normal. So you may have put in place a series of strategies, they work perfectly well. You get a flare up in your condition, those strategies aren't working anymore. So it's about reflecting on why didn't they work, what might work, what can I do differently that might work better for me. So that's around that sort of finding the new normal, which I think we can all relate to at the last 18 months that we've had. We've heard about that term quite a lot, and it was certainly something that came through here. So the ongoing reflective process really is key. And it takes away from that instructional approach. It's about people reflecting on their own experiences, their own condition, their own experience of the condition. Okay. So, as Jo said, we then got a group of people with neurological conditions together and formed a Steven group to look at how we could translate that framework into a self-management tool. And we called it My Life Tool, which again was chosen by the Steven group. And I'm not sure if you can see, but it's a little A5 booklet folder with lots of different little booklets inside, which is what you can see on the the image there. And the idea is that people can come back to this as and when they need to. So it's not a one-off event. You don't just sit and work through it from beginning to end and that's it, you're done. You can dip in and out of it. You can start on booklet 4 if you need to. It's about what you need at that particular point in time. So we've got the toolbox, which is the 5 booklets related to the elements of the framework. My journey booklet was an introduction to the tool and our concept of self-management, and a scrapbook, which I'll mention later as well. So the 5 toolbox booklets, so these are directly related to the framework diagram I showed you a moment ago. So the first booklet is me and my condition. So that's thinking about how the long-term condition or conditions affects your identity, how you see yourself, and your expectations of yourself as well, how you manage those. The second one, embracing the body, is about planning and pacing and really paying attention to the signs and symptoms of the long-term conditions. The third one, taking charge, is to encourage and support people to really think about how to learn about their condition and how to goal set and build their resilience. The fourth one, connecting with others, was emphasising the benefits of social support, but also supporting others. That came through strongly in the original research, that it's also about meaning and purpose comes from supporting other people, not just receiving support as well. And also thinking about how you ask for support, because it can be difficult to ask for support as well. And then the last one, what's important to me, was sort of trying to capture what does give someone a sense of meaning and purpose in life, what does give them meaning and purpose. And again, that's different for everybody. Taking time for yourself to identify those things. It could be spending time with family. It could be engaging in arts and crafts activities. It could be having a reason to get out of bed in the morning. It will really vary from person to person. And the booklet is there to prompt reflection on what is important to the person. And we had a positive psychology approach really underpinned the tool. So looking to the strengths rather than to the negatives. And also some elements around resilience, mindfulness were in there as well. And these are just some examples of the different tasks that are in the booklet. So the coat of arms was the one for me and my condition. So thinking about who you are, how do you want other people to see you? What are your qualities, your strengths? You know, who are you as a person? And you can write in it, you could draw in it if you're quite creative. And you know, what's your motto in life? You can put at the bottom of the shield there. Approaching challenges and demands was around goal setting and resilience. Finding time for me, so thinking about, you know, is there something short term, quite short term, that I could maybe do once a week or once a month that gives me time for me, and building it up. You know, what could I do longer term? What are my ultimate aims further down the line? Glass half full, about building on the positives, you know, note down something that made you feel good about yourself. So again, thinking about who you are in your sense of identity. And this one was from a resource that NeuroKey had already published. So thinking about the symptoms, the physical symptoms that you experience from your condition, your long-term conditions, and what makes them worse, what makes them better, how do you know when you've overdone it, and those sorts of things. And what we added was the mind section on the left-hand side of the screen, which came from someone with an acquired brain injury who said, well, actually a lot for me is cognitive. So we added the mind element in there as well. So they're just some examples of what's in the tool. And then to help with the reflective process, we needed something to encourage reflection. And we originally thought about some sort of a diary, but in the original project, when we asked people to reflect on their self-management experience, we asked them to keep a scrapbook for a month. And we got all sorts of great things in the scrapbooks, things that people had created, photographs, poems, song lyrics, all sorts of different things. So we stayed with that idea. So we've included a scrapbook as well, so to help people to reflect. And we know the creativity can be good for well-being as well, psychological well-being. So there was that element came into it as well. So the scrapbook's there to really prompt the reflection. But if people just want to use it as a diary, then that's perfectly fine as well. It is literally just a blank book. You don't even have to use the one in the file. They could find their own. So that's where the scrapbook idea came from. So what we did, we evaluated this with 8 people with long-term conditions. So this is when we broadened out to any long-term condition. You can see we had quite a range there. And what we looked at for this evaluation was how what they were telling us mapped on to the original framework. And we found that it did, and that their self-management experience was positively affected by using My Life tool. Just a couple of quotes there. So someone commenting that their self-esteem and self-efficacy has been positively impacted by using the tool. And the second one here, a little bit broader about the philosophy really, someone who'd used CBT before and found that this our tool was much more nurturing, the focus on the positive, the focus on the strength rather than the focus on the negative and trying to change that. She found really quite positive and empowering in a more nurturing way of approaching self-management. So off the back of the strong evaluations, and as Jo said, we started rolling it out in different services in the region. The one thing that we felt was missing was that social element, because you can just sit and work through the tool on your own. So we wanted to develop a face-to-face programme, and we used the scrapbook as the starting point for this. So what we developed is a 7-session programme called My Creative Life, and each session focuses on a specific booklet from the tool. And what we've done is we've developed creative activities that encourage reflection on each of those aspects of self-management. And these creative activities were developed with the participant researchers, with people with long-term conditions. So when we ran it out in 2020, we ran the pilot one. And at the end of every session, I would sit with the peer mentors and participant researchers. They were the same people, so they were there as researchers and they were there as peer mentors within the sessions as well. And we'd sit at the end and say, right, what worked, what didn't work? Next week we're looking at this, what are we going to do next week? What sort of tasks and activities could we get them to do? And we started to develop them out that way. And we ran that programme for 12 weeks, and then lockdown happened, the first lockdown, and we moved online just with the peer mentors. And we've continued working. Every 2 weeks we meet, and we do little creative activities just ourselves, and we've developed more activities. And ultimately we pulled all of that together last December and created the final programme and practitioner handbook. So the activities weren't the original ones, they've definitely evolved, but they've evolved with the people themselves, with people with long-term conditions, with the peer mentors. So the idea behind those activities is they'll foster reflection and start a discussion in the group. And again, that's where the peer mentors were really useful, because they could get those discussions going as well. It's based on the premise that everyone can be creative. We weren't expecting works of art. You know, some people literally just wrote sentences into the sheets, and that was perfectly fine. And it was non-instructional. We just we gave them the outline, but then it was for them to work in their own particular way. And some people came to the sessions and said, actually, I really want to do this today. I've come up with this idea, and we let them do that. That wasn't a problem. And we tried to amend some of the sessions as well to suit the needs. As we got to know the people on the programme, we tried to work to their strengths as well and play around a little bit with things like that. So this is an example thinking about finding time for me. So thinking about a game of snakes and ladders. What are your snakes? What are the things that get in the way of finding time for you? What are your barriers, if you like? And what are your ladders? What are the things that help you get there? And, you know, you could do this as a group, but all of these activities could work as a group, or you could do them individually. And, you know, you could create a large game of this, of snakes and ladders. You could actually play the game in the session. And as you hit a snake, get a discussion going around what could you do about that barrier? You know, what could you do to overcome it? So they're all there to get the discussions going. My ID badge, back to identity and me and my condition. Who am I? Who, you know, how do I want people to see me? What do I want them to know about me, and those sorts of things? Because a lot of people, you know, we often, a lot of us wear the lanyards these days. And if you think about the sunflower lanyard for hidden conditions as well, that's where this idea sort of came from. My aims, thinking about goal setting, but thinking about it like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Again, you could do that as a group and put all of your pieces together. And these are some examples of what we came up with. So we've got a vision board there in the bottom left-hand corner, which is the first of the activities. What do you want to get out of the programme? And then we come back to that at the end. You know, did it meet your expectations? Where do you go next? The one with the hands was something we trialled in the lockdown when we were running some online sessions, because we needed something quite easy for people to use, you know, you know, on your hand, draw around your hand, and what sort of things, you know, where have you come from, where are you going, those sorts of things. The one at the top with the people around social support element, and again with my social system instead of solar system. You know, what are the qualities that you need from the support around you, and those sorts of things. So they're just some of the examples that we've created. So we evaluated this with another 7 people, again with a range of conditions. You'll see there some mental health conditions as well. I think the majority of them had multiple long-term conditions. And again, it was received very well by participants. It led to improvements in their mental and physical well-being, as you can see there from the quotes. Again, one around sort of expectations of themselves, not beating themselves up for not being able to do something. And another one around more the physical aspects of well-being and doing more exercise and doing it in small chunks rather than just trying to go for it, you know, like they tried to do before. So as we've both mentioned, underpinning all of this was a participatory approach. So this really came to the fore in the third part with the Creative Life programme, where we did have people with long-term conditions acting as peer mentors during the sessions, but also as researchers. So they were involved when we got the data in from the interviews with the participants. We analysed it together with the peer researchers. We actually did a phenomenological analysis. So we did a little bit of training in phenomenology, and we were online, unfortunately, at that point, but we managed, you know, we all got together on Teams and recorded a transcript together, and the insight was fabulous. As a researcher, I was slightly concerned that it might come out a little biased. You know, we all talk about reflexivity and not letting our own personal issues getting in the way. And I thought, well, you know, they're not trained in that. This is going to be difficult. And there was only the odd occasion where I just had to say, that's maybe it's going a little too far, and we had to rein it in. And there was absolutely no problem in that. But the insight, the depth of insight that they had in the quotes was amazing. And we are in the process of writing up the paper at the moment, and they will be co-authors on the paper. And we developed a training package. So we trained them in ethics, peer mentoring, phenomenological analysis and dissemination. So when we launched the programme in December. They were there, and they even presented at the event. So really, right the way through, from start to finish, they've been involved. And as I say, we're still working with them now to make amendments and developments to the tool. And this is what they were telling us. You know, it's reinforced anything's possible. It's important that we're on a journey, we're in it together. You're in a team together. It can be a lonely road without that. And the last one I found really insightful. You know, the peer researchers had lived with multiple conditions for a very long time, and one in particular said, look, we've forgotten where we've come from. It is a journey. And listening to the participants, they realised how far they themselves had come from day one until today, and they really got something out of that. So, in terms of our conclusions, self-management is a process, it's fluid, it's ongoing, and it's about a change in mindset. Thinking about the processes of creative activity, things about self-development and reappraisal that comes through in the literature, it maps onto that process of self-management. And our package supports that. Jo, would you like to finish the rest?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, well, let's have a drink.
Yeah, there was a defined shift away from identifying themselves by their condition or their diagnosis, and only seeing barriers, particularly obviously with the social situation that's been going on. They've been marginalized quite a lot. And they've reappraised that self-development element of creativity to take a look at the issues that were important to them and what they can do in the future. Support in the journey was just more than important. It's a way of people knowing where they fit in, not just as a diagnosis, but socially, because they do feel quite isolated by their diagnosis, and when they join peer support or develop social relationships, it is that mutual support that becomes very important. And this program offers that through the mentors and others. We've extended, the charity itself has extended our peer support because of this program and the use of the tool. And we've also developed a new working relationship with New Zealand. When we launched in December, Gordon Jackman from the Duncan Foundation joined the event, and he was very impressed with the program and asked for contact and whether they could run the program, which they've been doing up to April this year. And Gordon has now left the Duncan Foundation to do other work, but he's given us some very useful evaluation of their program, which was actually purely for the post-polio client group. They have, running the program, they've been actually operating it right the way across New Zealand online, and they found it a very useful way of taking a look at themselves and that reflective process. The flexibility was a really key issue for us, and there's a package that supports people to be who they are without any kind of prescription, judgment, any kind of barrier. And I think that really showed in the engagement where people were coming together as strangers and leaving as friends. They are received as passive recipients of treatment, whereas we flip that on their head. And this program really saw them as active and a real focus on living with rather than suffering from, which is very much the mantra of this charity anyway. So the focus on creative activities as an aspect of self-management. Yes, there is a range of evidence to prove creative activities really does help, but it was more about supporting the psychosocial aspects of it in reflection and engagement with self-management, rather than just maybe reinterpreting a rehabilitation program or something. It became a bit less overwhelming for people. This is pan condition, as we've shown you in previous slides. This very much is pan condition. And one of my key objectives is making sure, with all the developments around the National Health Service in England at the moment, is about homogenizing services at the point of contact. We were struggling to find out where the neurological client group fitted in. So we very much wanted to say through this program, really, neurological conditions really need to be on the long-term condition agenda, because people with diabetes can still be diagnosed with multiple sclerosis or, you know, a range of other comorbidities. And we very much wanted to also bring into more of the mainstream the need for a bit better quality psychosocial support. So it offers an identity, not a diagnosis. Participatory and lived experience approach is key. We've been able to develop this program very much on everything we've seen through talking to people with lived experience over a lot of years about even where they've maybe lost employment, that they can still improve their skills, they can still make new social connections, and it contributes to their problem solving, which automatically builds confidence. And in some of the evaluation, we've been able to really show that people get on with the process of their lives in a better way. That's it, Steph.
Thanks, Jo. So that's it. There are contact details and links to the web if you want to find out a little bit more about me and Jo and the work that we do as well. So thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now, Liz.
Yeah, and I will stop the recording and then we can take some questions. So first, I'd just like to thank you first before I stop the recording. It was a great presentation. Thank you very much.